Welcome one and all. You're listening to What on Earth is Happening here on Republic Broadcasting. I'm your host, Mark Passio. My website, whatonearthishappening.com. The network's website, republicbroadcasting.org. Today is Saturday, April 5th, 2014. This show is live right here on Republic Broadcasting every Saturday evening from 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. Eastern Time. That's 9 p.m. to midnight Central. We have a great show lined up for you here today. I'm going to be continuing to discuss the possible origins of psychopathy on the show tonight. And what we're really going to be doing is going to the phones to get people's opinions on the possible origins of where psychopathy came from within humanity. I'm really interested in hearing from people because it's a very interesting dynamic. You know, when you get into people's minds and you ask them about what caused this, where did this come from, where do you think this came into being from, it tells you a lot about where the human mindset is at. So I'd like to try to put my finger on that pulse tonight. And in doing so, let me give the call-in number right off the bat. You can call in throughout the show to give me your take on what the possible origin of psychopathy, the condition of a human being, a subset of human beings having the inability, lacking the actual capacity to feel emotions in the physiology, to feel the repercussions of what they do through their behaviors to another living being. The Truth, Freedom, Prosperity Screening and Discussion Night will be taking place on the third Thursday of every month at the Guerin Recreation Center. That's at 1600 Jackson Street in Philadelphia. That is taking place Thursday, April 17th at 7 o'clock p.m. Thursday, April 17th, 7 o'clock p.m. This month, we're going to be showing the documentary film, I Am Fishhead. I Am Fishhead is a documentary about psychopathy, about the condition of psychopathy, about what it actually is, how prevalent it is in society, and most of all, how human beings allow this condition to continue unchecked because, one, many of them don't know anything about it, and two, they won't stand up for their rights and actually do something about it and take right action when it comes to standing up against psychopaths, especially the ones that are controlling our society. So that's the event announcements I have for tonight. Also, there is a support donation button on the whatonearthishappening.com website. If you feel that you've gained value from the information up on that site and through the radio show and podcast, feel free to make a voluntary donation through the donate button on the left-hand side of the page. Images for today's show. Again, I always usually prepare slides for the show. Today I only have one. It's a light day regarding images that are posted because, again, I'm not really going to introduce a whole lot of new material. I'm going to basically review some things that we've already talked about regarding psychopathy. And again, I really want to hear people's take on the origins of this condition. I feel that's very important because it's a question that is very rarely ever asked. How many people are even looking at the causal factor or the origin of this condition? Where did it come from? What put it here with us? You know, did it develop over time? Is it something that's natural? You know, is it something that is highly unnatural and something did this put us in this condition deliberately or possibly inadvertently by accident? You know, you never hear people talking about that because to acknowledge that psychopathy even exists and to understand it, you then have to go to that implication. Where did it come from? That's a lot of the reason why a lot of people don't even want to acknowledge it exists. I still get emails. I told people this last week. I tell people this when I'm interviewed on other shows. I still get emails from people trying to convince me that psychopaths don't exist at all, that there's no such thing as this condition, that it's an invented condition. You know, and psychiatrists want to make this up so that they could put people on drugs, on psychotropic drugs. And I realize, do a lot of psychologists and psychiatrists want to do that? Absolutely. There's no question in my mind that there's a lot of invented mental conditions so that they could put people on expensive drugs. Psychopathy is not one of them, ladies and gentlemen, and the reason I know that is because I worked with a lot of psychopaths in my past. If you're around people like this and you know definitively that they have this condition after understanding a description of it, I don't need anybody trying to convince me that this isn't real, okay? I know it definitively from firsthand experience out around these individuals. All right, and I'm telling you, it isn't just that they became that way over time. Many of them are like that, and this is a really great book to read on this whole topic. Is The Sociopath Next Door by Dr. Martha Stout. Maybe I'll post a link to it in the podcast. By the way, this is podcast number 150 for What on Earth is Happening. A little bit of a milestone, the 150th episode tonight. But to go back to what led me into this is, again, there's not going to be a whole lot of brand new material for in-depth study and new material as far as that's concerned tonight. I really want to get your take on the origins of psychopathy, and there is one image that goes along with the show tonight. It's up on the radio show page or posted with the podcast. Again, this is podcast 150. And it's essentially all of the different possibilities for the origins of psychopathy. What I'd like to hear is if anybody has any additional possibilities. So we'll go to your calls throughout the show. You're listening to What on Earth is Happening? Stay with us. Welcome back, everyone. You're listening to What on Earth is Happening here on Republic Broadcasting. I'm your host, Mark Passio. My website, whatonearthishappening.com. Before we go to the phones, I just also want to briefly mention we are in the middle of the season of the year known as the Season of Sacrifice. I broke it down last week on this show, and lo and behold, during the week we had a mass shooting in the middle of the season, actually toward the beginning of the Season of Sacrifice. Clearly a false flag, clearly another justification for gun control and the further shutdown of an already closed society. And I just wanted to mention, I mean, you look at some of the numerology involved, the last Fort Hood shooting, 9 killed, and they rounded it out real nicely this time. 4 more killed for a total of 13 between the two. You know, they love their little number jabs and little games that they play as far as numbers are concerned, don't they? But just expect more things like this as this 40-day time period unfolds. And I wouldn't be, letting down your guard just yet, because usually around April 20th they have some big things in the works, April 19th and 20th. And then around May 1st is another big time of the year to watch for blood rituals. So just talking about it last week, and then it happens right there very shortly thereafter. So the phones are open for anything anybody wants to talk about, actually. I'd prefer to hear about what you think the possible origins of psychopathy are, but that we're not limited to that. If you want to call in and ask questions about anything I've covered, it's fair game. So the call-in number to join us, 800-313-9443. Once again, 800-313-9443 to join us on What on Earth is Happening. Let's go right to the phones. Bob from Cincinnati, my friend, you are live on What on Earth is Happening. Welcome.
You are too kind. Thank you, Mark. Mark, congratulations on 150 episodes. This is a great milestone, and it was such a pleasure to see you and Barb and the others.
Oh, Bob, did we lose you there?
We did.
Oh, Bob, call right back in. The producer will put you back through. All right, call back in, Bob. Great to hear from Bob from Cincinnati. It looks like he had some phone problems there. Hopefully we can get him back on. Let's go to Raphael in Indiana. Raphael, you're live on What on Earth is Happening. Welcome.
Hi, Mark. Nice to speak to you finally. Just want to say thanks for everything you've been doing and keep up the great work.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Sure.
I'm kind of being kind of torn and trying to figure out what I'm actually trying to, distinguish between our founding fathers, because it seems like they took us out of the old order and brought us into like the New World Order, and that's where I'm getting confused as far as like what their real purpose was, because some of the founding fathers were Freemasons, but yet some of them tried to separate from the old world order. So that's I kind of want to get your insight on that.
Yeah, I've talked about this briefly before. I think there were different factions of the, quote, founding fathers in this country, and some of them were indeed what I would consider light Freemasons and were working toward true freedom and were really trying to separate from the crown and trying to start a life here that was unfettered by the psychopathic rule of the old world. However, they didn't go far enough in their understanding of what true freedom entails. Many of them didn't apply that to everyone. And that came through in their allowing to of setting up of institutions such as African American slavery in this country, that we from slaves being brought over from Africa, specifically the Ivory Coast, and to allow that to continue unchecked as an institution here in America for well over the first 100 years after its founding, and it's just really an unacceptable. It was an unacceptable state of affairs. It's halfway understanding can't accomplish any modicum of real freedom. We need to go all the way in our understanding. And that's not to say that a lot of the founding fathers didn't have a good understanding of what real freedom is. I mean, if you really look at Thomas Paine, he was probably the most enlightened among them. And that's why I believe he is highly de-emphasized in the study of the origins of America today. Because the people in positions of power and who are writing history now, they don't want people to look into Thomas Paine. They don't want people to understand he was an anarchist. He was against all forms of any kind of a false religion that holds you back from truth, holds you back from an understanding of morality and natural law. So I think while specifically a lot of the founders that were in the northern states had a better understanding, if you look at the Declaration of Independence and how it even was voted upon, the southern states blocked it because Thomas Jefferson, who, yes, was a slave owner in the state of Virginia, he had already made a verbal contract with the slaves that were living on his land to release them from their bonds, and regardless of what the South was going to do. So he deplored the practice to begin with, but it was an institutional way of life in the South, and many people just, that's how they were raised. So he took it up and then obviously was ready to set it down and set it aside and said, no, if we want to be free, we can't do this to other beings. So he had a decent understanding and was prepared to do what was necessary to cease that practice. But if you look at the southern state representatives during the Continental Congress, they refused and they looked at the anti-slavery laws in the Declaration of anti-slavery clauses, I should say, in the Declaration of Independence, and they were all prepared to walk out of the ratification of the Declaration en masse and say, we're not going to get behind this, we're not going to sign it, and it's going to die in committee right here unless you take these clauses out. And eventually Franklin and Adams persuaded Jefferson and said, we have to fight one battle at a time. Let's go for independence first, and we'll fight this battle when we come to it. But if we don't get their support, the support from the rich states in the South now, we're not going to have any new country to try to set up some kind of system of freedom in. I feel that this was the dichotomy that was going on. People understood freedom at many different levels, and they weren't fully enlightened. So I don't take the approach that, they were all just working toward the crown to try to set up some new slave colony here. Many of them really wanted true freedom, but didn't have a perfect understanding of what it meant to be enlightened or what freedom really meant Truly. So that's my take on the founders. It's something that can't be explained in a simple way. It's a complex interaction between a whole lot of human beings, just like what's taking place today in this country. Not everybody has an all the way understanding. It's the same dynamic.
And it's perfect, as you said. A lot of people are in that child mode where a lot of people I talk to, they think that they'll come and say, "Oh, well, the founding fathers," and a lot of them were Christians and this and that, and they base this on country and Christianity, and it's actually totally the opposite. They wanted to get rid of separate from the old church and old religion, so to speak, and just start anew. But
I think they all had different. I think they all had different philosophical and religious beliefs. There were Christians among the Founding Fathers. There were esoteric Christians among the Founding Fathers. There were deists among the Founding Fathers. There were atheists among them. There were also, people who, certain of them had an esoteric understanding of mystery traditions like Freemasonry or Rosicrucianism. So it's not a simple dynamic that's one thing. It's a complicated dynamic that was taking place there. Stay with us, everyone. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. This is What on Earth is Happening. I'm your host, Mark Passio. Oh, Bob from Cincinnati. I was looking forward to hearing his call, but unfortunately he had some phone problems. It was great seeing Bob out in Asheville, North Carolina. Came out, actually introduced me as part of my New Age BS Revisited presentation. So, Bob, keep trying to call back in. We'll see if we can get you back on the line. I want to thank Raphael in Indiana for his great question regarding, the nature of the Founding Fathers, what they were really attempting to do, and, ultimately failed. And I'd have to admit that. It's not to say that a new incarnation of the dynamic spirit that was the original driving force behind this country is impossible to revive, but because they did not really effectively, morally educate the entirety of the population and really communicate those values such in depth to people, this country has fallen into tyranny within a less than 200 year period, really, probably within less than 100 years, actually. It's a complicated dynamic, like I said, and you have to study it from many angles and realize that there were many different agendas at work. It is not one thing going on. Were there agents of the crown operating here? Absolutely. I personally think Alexander Hamilton was one of them. Were there really good men who were involved in Freemasonry, who were working toward the uplift and betterment of this country and its people? Yes, believe that as well. That's absolutely the case. So it's not just one thing going on there, and people who look at it from a unidimensional perspective, oh, they were Masons and so they were bad, don't understand what was happening in this country at that time period in history, and nor certainly do they understand anything about what real Freemasonry is if they try to just group anybody that studies it or tries to convey its teachings as all bad. So let's go to another caller. Let's go to Melinda in Ecuador. Melinda, you're live on What on Earth is Happening. Welcome.
Thank you. I wanted to say thank you, Mark, for who you are and for sharing some great wisdom to humanity in regards to the real truth, and a truth based on your direct experience instead of something you learned from somebody else in an educational institution or a website. It's one of the key elements in changing the world is being aware of direct experience and the knowing instead of a belief system.
Right.
And so a little nervous. I've never spoken on a radio show, but I have direct experience with some of the elements that are functioning that are affecting this planet in a negative way. And you were speaking about psychopathy, and what I'm become aware of is that there's a force that is trying to destroy humanity, and I believe that they're reptilians in nature, and that they're trying to take over humanity and destroy it through division and also through false education. So I wanted to hear your comments on that, and that's pretty much it, I think.
Yeah, I'm going to be getting into the possibility of interventionist aspect of human origins, okay? And what that means is that the traditional story that we get from archaeologists and anthropologists and biologists and, you know, people who propagate the Darwinian worldview may not be the whole story. There may be something else that has been going on here in the ancient past and really led to the condition that humanity finds itself in now. And that's why I'm so focused on this, the answer to this question of what is the possible origins of the condition of psychopathy. Because if you look at the rest of nature, you know, it doesn't really fit in. It's something that is an anomaly. You don't see it in really other species. You don't see this level of imbalance in the natural world. Which is why, to me, if you look at the one slide for tonight's show on the whatonearthishappening.com radio page or with the podcast for today, possibility number one, that it is just natural and nature caused this condition. Nature caused psychopathy, and as a result led to the current human condition of us being ruled by psychopaths, doesn't really hold much water. A lot of people will look at this and they'll say, this is the most plausible condition, possibility. This is the one that Occam's razor applies to, that it's the simplest, that it's just a naturally occurring phenomenon, that it's just a set of characteristics that somehow developed over time within a, you know, percentage of humanity. And this was just some sort of an adaptation that human beings underwent, you know, maybe environmental conditions drove it, etc. To me, that makes the least amount of sense when you really look at it in its totality. And when you, you know, try to come to an understanding of what led to this condition, you have to look in all the possible places. You have to say, well, if it wasn't a naturally occurring phenomenon, or some people may think it was, you know, is this just something that was foisted upon us, that was done to us directly? And then you have a bunch of possibilities. Well, that could mean it's just, this is the way God wanted it. You know, if you even believe in God, you know, would a creator of the universe be so twisted, himself, herself, itself, to say, I'm going to create this horrific condition here and just leave it here with this species just because what? He doesn't like us. It doesn't like us. It just wanted to torment us for some strange unknown purpose. You know, that's where God gets this, the force of creation gets its jollies from. Well, to me, that doesn't make any sense either. I think those two possibilities, 1 and 2, make very little bit of sense in my worldview. And again, that's what this will really, I think a discussion of this will show people. Like, what is your worldview? Do you believe nature does things like this? Do you believe God does things like this? Do you believe we do things like this? Or do you believe possibly that some other form of intelligence does things like this, and it's not human nature to do something like this? You know, possibility 3 from last week was we did this to ourselves. We arrived at some technological civilization in our ancient past, and, you know, we thought we were the kings of the universe, and we started tinkering with our own genetic code and inadvertently created this condition in the process. I'm not ruling that out. I'm saying that's also a possibility. I'm not saying that's, you know, couldn't be one of the things that led to this condition. Perhaps it is. But to me, the thing that makes the most sense is that this is something that was done to us as part of our origins, as part of the conditions that led to our creation as a species. And I don't mean our creation as a species by the God of creation. And that opens a whole big can of worms that puts people in a fear-based mindset, often because we're talking about the unknown. And then many people will say, well, you're going to talk about the current human condition being the result of something that a non-human intelligence did to the human species. That's a disempowering thing to put out there for people. Well, the truth is never disempowering. If that were the truth, I'm not saying it absolutely is. I'm saying if it were the truth, I think it's a possibility, but if it were the truth, would you not want to know that and be in a position of knowledge? Knowledge is always going to create empowerment. Only ignorance creates disempowerment. So I hear people who will say, I won't even entertain that notion because it's somehow disempowering and fear-based. Because if people think they're up against something that's not them, it's a different species altogether, then they shut down completely and they don't want to get involved because they think there's nothing they can do about it. And I tell people, can you please point to me the place where I ever said, ever, there is nothing we can do about our condition? Because you will never find it. You'll never find that in any record of anything I've ever stated. The only thing I've said that there's nothing we can do anything about is the existence of natural law, because those are the boundary conditions of the 3D universe. They're the boundary conditions of the creation itself. And those laws are in place, and there is nothing we could do about that except understand that they're in place, understand how they work, and then choose whether to live in harmony with them or not. So we'll go back to the phones on the other side of this break. Plenty of callers in queue. So let's continue to go to the phone lines. Fred in Georgia, you're live on whatonearthishappening.com. On What on Earth is Happening. Welcome.
Hey, thanks, Mark. How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
Good. I am calling you because I have feet on the ground in the trenches with causality known experience with psychopathy.
Okay, go right ahead.
Have you ever heard of something called reactive attachment disorder?
No.
Okay. Reactive attachment disorder is very common when you adopt kids from Eastern European countries, and it's because they grew up in orphanages. There's a movie that you should find and seek out that will explain it to you, I think, in pictures more than my words could tell you. It's called The Border, Boardr.
Okay.
Okay. And what happens essentially, wait, before I go into this, I would like, if you can, I've heard you mention it a couple of times, to do a show on the original Christianity.
Yeah, I've essentially done that show already with Bob from Cincinnati on Occult Empire. We did an entire show on Occult Empire on the Rosicrucian tradition, which is esoteric Christianity. That goes back to the Gnostic tradition and the original Christian tradition in the Middle East in the turn of the first century. But it's essentially the same tradition. One is just the Western esoteric variant of that tradition. But are you specifically referring to Gnosticism or the Essene tradition?
Well, I think that's probably kind of what I'm referring to, because I want to find the original. And, if it's in the podcast, I'm only up to like 59 now. So
I would say every real mystery tradition school of thought is teaching that tradition, regardless of where its origin is, what time period of the world. If you want to talk about real Christianity, it predates the birth of Christ in biblical terms. That tradition was still being taught thousands of years before Christ was ever born as Jesus. Whether you believe in that as a historical personage or not, or you think it's an astrotheological allegory, is not the point. The point is that tradition, the actual gnosis, the knowledge of natural law and the knowledge of the way to actually be in the world, is the original Christian tradition, regardless of what other name you want to call it. True esoteric Kabbalah is that tradition. True esoteric Freemasonry is that tradition. True esoteric Rosicrucianism is that tradition. The Tarot tradition of the ancient world is that tradition. They were all teaching the same essential elements regarding life, regarding the nature of consciousness, and regarding natural law. And they were just different systems of correspondences and symbols and word systems of just teaching people through parable, through allegory, etc. They were just different ways of expressing the same overarching concepts. This tradition's been around since time immemorial. It's been here for as long as humanity has been here. That knowledge really can never be erased and can never be destroyed. It can only be basically darkened over. You could cover it up for a time, like you could cover somebody's body with a thick blanket or cloth and, prevent them from seeing what's on the other side of that veil. But what's on the other side is always going to be there. And it's just a matter of time until we remove the things that have veiled our sight, and we'll be able to see and understand that those teachings for what they really are, and understand they've always been here. So really, if you want to get down to it, I've really already talked about this in past shows. If you want to go back to the shows on Kabbalah or Freemasonry, or the show that I did with Bob from Cincinnati on his show, Occult Empire on Rosicrucianism, they all touch on what I consider to be the true original esoteric tradition. It's all one tradition, really, if you ask me.
Well, and that's the feeling I get, and I'm comforted when you say that, because yes, that is the definite feeling I get when I'm listening to all this stuff. So I'll go on to the next request I have for you, and I'll go into my psychopathy thing. If you can get Jay back on to talk more about how to help people with psychopathy, because the kids that come from these Russian orphanages, I think, are a clue.
Yes, and what you're talking about there, Fred, is secondary psychopathy, because they're not psychopaths necessarily from birth. This is happening because of the conditions that they're in at a very young age. And there's a big difference. We have to delineate that difference, certainly, between primary and secondary psychopathy. So those individuals, I do believe, can be helped without any question, without any doubt in my mind. Secondary psychopathy is reversible. With a lot of work, with a lot of attention, with a lot of care, it is reversible. Primary psychopathy, on the other hand, is a totally different story. And I should have placed in my slide, ladies and gentlemen, this is a kind of an oversight on my part, but I'm assuming that people know what I mean when I'm talking about the origins of psychopathy. I mean the origins of primary psychopathy, or what's been called genetic psychopathy, or psychopathy from birth, as a condition in the human genome that is a defect in the human genome. I'm not talking about psychopathy that is generated or brought on by traumatic conditions, whether early on in life or later in life. So that I should qualify that, and perhaps even change the slide and say the possible origins of primary psychopathy in humanity. The form that Fred here is talking about, ladies and gentlemen, is secondary psychopathy that is taken on through traumatic circumstance in life, and then the emotions get numbed out of the individual. And this can happen at a young age. So I absolutely think that's a great idea. I think Jay Parker, who you're speaking of, has a lot of great techniques for that. I've talked about some techniques that can help to balance the mind. Ultimately, you really have to have a lot of people in a caring environment working on that individual. That's really what it's going to take. One person's not going to do it. One just kind of knowledge or technique's not going to do it. It's going to take a multifaceted approach from multiple individuals who deeply care. And that's what we're really up against, ladies and gentlemen. We're up against that. That's our work. That work that Fred here is talking about to help reverse the condition of a secondary psychopath in early life. That's really our work. All the people out there who are still asleep, they're in this condition of not caring, and it mimics secondary psychopathy. And they don't care, and they don't have knowledge. And it's our work. We have to come together as people who are knowledgeable, as people who do know what's going on, as people who do care, and make that be something that is an infectious energy that propagates to these people. We can't do it one on one. It doesn't work that way. You've heard the adage that, like, you have to hear something seven times from at least seven different people for it to even become part of your worldview, that you will even entertain, that you will even consider as a possibility, let alone understanding and looking into it for yourself, and then going, to acquire knowledge about it and understand that it may be true. This is the great work. This is the work that I keep talking about that really is ours to do. We have to come together and team up on people. Forget about one person trying to convince one other person. You're not going to get very far that way. Just like one person working on one psychopath, they're not going to get very far. It's going to be very arduous, difficult, painstaking work that's going to take all the life energy out of that person. Believe me. We need to team up on people. We need to bring people information in numbers all at the same time. When they hear it from multiple different people, then they're going to start saying, hey, there's something to this. They hear it from one person. It makes that very easy to dismiss. That's how the mind works, unfortunately. That's how we consider the source for veracity or truthfulness of information, unfortunately. We say, well, what's my initial impression of this person? Oh, it's not that I totally trust them. Well, then what they're saying can't be true, you know? We'll pick this up on the other side of this break. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. This is What on Earth is Happening into the second hour of the show this evening. Fred in Georgia, you had wanted to wrap up your comments and insights, and we'll move on to some other calls. So you could finish up. Go right ahead.
I will. Thanks, Mark. First off, let me tell you that your information, I think it's helping me help my son, because he is the secondary psychopathy, I think, by the virtue of being reactive attachment disorder. And natural law is a good rule to be able to explain to him.
Sure. And
right.
and also the causal factor of that condition, you're probably well aware, is that parental abandonment issue that lies underneath. You know, it
is, and I think based on what I've heard from you, it's the destruction of the feminine pillar
of care.
There's a lack of empathy.
Yeah.
Right. And it's interesting because I don't know if this has anything to do with that, but he was tested for IQ, and he's at 98%.
Right.
His intellect.
Yeah, no problem with the intellect, right.
Right. His intellect is very high, and he's a sweet kid, but he completely lacks empathy. And
sure.
And you were talking about secondary and primary psychopathy. Have you ever seen the movie the Green Lantern?
I did, yes. That is entirely about care, the generative principle, the green energy, the heart energy. And they liken it to will, because the will is driven by true care. You know, so that's the force they call that in that movie. Great movie, actually.
It is. Do you remember the primary villain wants to make everyone else ugly?
Right.
Right. And, you know, I propose to you, perhaps, the Dark Occultists, being psychopaths themselves, want to propagate psychopathy.
Of course.
If you look at the general trends in society, two parents working, no close attachment, it really generates this kind of psychopathy.
It's atomization. It's basically driving a wedge between everybody in society, creating a world where the value system is about dog eat dog, you know, and atomizing people so that they never really come together in a focused way, in a caring way. You know, that's what all their rituals are about. The cremation of care ritual is about the destruction of that feminine force, that energy of care. You know, because they know care is what generates our entire reality. What we care enough to put our attention on and then put our willpower behind is what gets manifested. That's the law of creation. That's the law of attraction, the real one, you know. So very, very powerful insights. I'm glad you really understand what they're really trying to do, Fred, because many people never come to that understanding, and they are trying to propagate this disease. Absolutely. They want people to be like them, and we have to fight that, and you fight that by caring enough. And I wish you all the best with your son, and I want to thank you for your call, and I think it can be done. You're obviously going to have to work on it in a very focused way with a lot of other people. My best advice in a situation like that, I'm not going to just tell you exactly how to do it because there's so many different approaches, but my best advice is don't try to take all that onto your own shoulders by yourself. Work with other people, with this individual that you're talking about, that you're trying to build up out of that condition. The more people who understand the condition and are helping you to do it with willpower, I think the better success rate that you'll have, the better success you're going to have with that endeavor. So all my best to you. Bob from Cincinnati, back in the queue. Bob, welcome back to What on Earth is Happening. Sorry you got cut off last time.
Oh, thank you, Mark, and I'm so glad I got back through.
I missed the last portion of the show. I'll have to go back and check it out. But thank you once again for your voice from all of us out here on 150 episodes. It is such an honor to speak to you again on your relaunch show here on Republic Broadcasting. What on earth is happening?
Definitely. And Bob, it was great hanging out with you in North Carolina. We had a really great time after the New Age BS and the Suppression of the Sacred Masculine Revisited seminar that I gave there in Asheville. We all hung out, had a nice meal, talked until about midnight that evening, and just really all got together and had a great time and shared a lot of great ideas. So it was a great to see you there. And your wife was there as well, and it was just an all-around great time.
Thank you. Yes, it was. And I've recently put up a few shows, some commentaries. I've posted your Natural Law, Real Law of Attraction in New Haven, Connecticut, Yale lecture as 4 parts for Occult Empire. But I did a little intro, and I spoke about how it was such a pleasure and how I had to elbow 3 or 4 people just to get near you at that after party. Mark entertained us, entertained our questions. It was a one-on-one session over a couple of brews with Mark Passio.
That's right.
I wouldn't have passed that up for dinner with the top of the food chain, Mark, at their New York finery. But thank you for taking my call. It was such a wonderful time. Freeman Fly was there.
Yeah.
He came up from South Carolina.
That's right.
With
Freeman and Jamie, they were both there. It was just awesome afterward, because again, you could relax with the formalities of a formal presentation and just relate to people as an individual and as friends, as people who are all trying to get the same thing accomplished. So that was probably my favorite part of the whole evening and the whole weekend. And like I was saying before, I feel that there were teachers who were there. There were people who are teaching this information, not just coming and hearing about it and learning about it themselves. They're at the point where they're getting ready to transition and start teaching this information. And that's what gave me a lot of hope at the Asheville seminar. I think it was really great and rejuvenating, for me to see that amongst the people who attended. And as I told people last week, I did recover the audio. The audio sounds good. It wasn't audio recorded at the computer on the stage, but it was recorded through a microphone through the air. But it was good quality, a good quality recorder, obviously. And I am working on the video as we speak, so that should be forthcoming within hopefully a couple of weeks at the most. My video editing skills are not the sharpest or the fastest, but I trudge my way through it, and I'll get a decent video out there within a reasonable amount of time. So look for that at least within the next month.
Yes, our good new friend Steve from Florida saved the day.
Yes, he did.
And what a great person.
He's going to be a teacher of this information. He already really is. I mean, what a great guy, You could just tell by talking to him how genuine he was, and that's the same dynamic I got from everybody there. They're not only hungry for this information, they're hungry to start presenting it to other people. That's what we need more of. Absolutely.
Yes, more voices out there just doing whatever they can, posting a blog on one of the Blogspot or WordPress.com, going on to the radio shows, like Blog Talk, of course, is my venue, but there's TalkShoe. Everybody, guys, get out there, get your voices out there, speak natural law as you know it. It is worthwhile. Mark, any determination on these psychopaths? What's driving the psychopath?
Well, like I was saying, they want everybody to be as miserable as they are. There's a great Carlos Castaneda quote, regardless of what anyone thinks of Castaneda, because he put out allegories as kind of like, real life stories. But I personally really like his work, and I think it's the underlying philosophical messages in the work that are important, not what the actual condition was. This is where people always get hung up. Was he really there with this guy? Was he a real guy? Is he making it up? Folks, he's putting the philosophical understanding into an allegorical work of fiction, and there's nothing wrong with doing that. Okay? you could get all on his case because he may have passed it off as an actual series of events, but whatever. Does the work stand on its own for the value it's trying to teach people? And I feel that it does. And he talks about the predator mindset the Don Juan character talks about. Maybe I'll try to find that during one of the breaks and read it to people, because it's all about the condition of psychopathy and how these controllers try to propagate it. Bob, great to hear from you. Thanks so much for calling. We'll see you on the other side of this break. We'll be right back, folks. This is What on Earth is Happening. I'm your host, Mark Passio. I want to actually give people another couple of real quick, brief announcements. I'm going to be in St. Louis, Missouri. It's shaping up to be a pretty good event. It's going to be taking place at the end of May. I think it's the last day of May, May 31st. So keep that date in mind. I'm going to announce some definite details on it within the next week. So look for that to go up on my website, and I'll be talking about it here next week as well when I get more fully confirmed details. But the date is set for May 31st in St. Louis, Missouri. So that's going to be the next seminar that I'm giving. Also, just want to, I put the word out there in an interview this week. That's on my news section of my my website, whatonearthishappening.com. But I figured I'd announce it here officially tonight for the first time that there is going to be a What on Earth is Happening book. It's actively in the works right now, and I'm working with an editor to make that happen. So there will be probably more than one volume at some point, but at least the first volume, I'm hoping that between myself and the editor I'm working with, we can collaborate on this project and get it done within maybe a year's time. So within the next year, there's going to probably be a book out called What on Earth is Happening. And hopefully it will be the first in a series. So people have been really hammering on me to put this information out there in written form, and with the gentleman that I'm working with, hopefully we could make that happen within a short order of time. I'm really excited about the whole project, and I think it's going to be really great when we do finally publish this in physical book form. So for hardcore readers out there, and for people who prefer the written format, the written media, this book is going to be it's going to hit huge when it finally hits, and it'll make a great gift for people too who you might want to wake up to what's really going on. So just thought I'd throw that out here for the first time, and I'm sure lots of people will hound me by email. When's this going to be actually out and done? It'll be finished when it's finished. That's the answer. And but just wanted to let people know it is in the works. So that's really great news, and it's big news. Because the spoken word is my preferred format, not so much the written word, but I do realize the importance of putting something like that out there, and we're going to make it happen. So let's go back to the phones. So let's talk to Alex in New Hampshire. Alex, you're live on What on Earth is Happening. Welcome.
Hi, Mark. Thank you for taking my call.
Absolutely.
I have two brief questions.
Sure.
The first question is, so these people with this occultic knowledge,
mm-hmm.
they understand natural law and they understand how it works.
Right.
And if that's the case, why would they try to do such great evil to humanity, knowing that they're going to get a spiritual kick in the butt?
Okay, I have answered this question before on previous What on Earth is Happening podcasts, but it is very important. Okay, the answer is they are not the ones doing the evil. Ultimately, the ones who are really controlling the dynamic are issuing the orders to other individuals to carry them out by following their orders. The order followers are the ones who are doing this with their behavior, with their actions to the people of humanity. They are the ones who actually accomplish the task. So that is the answer. How do they think that they are going to escape from the brunt of the karmic consequences of natural law? because they're not the ones actually performing the actions. Order followers are, namely the police and the military. The people who are going to take upon their life force, upon their soul, the deepest karmic consequence when it comes to natural law consequences are the people who actually do the violent actions that they have no right to perform against other individuals. And those individuals throughout history have been the dupes, the pawns, the dogs of these individuals who do understand how this works. And that is how they are insulating themselves from those consequences, because they're not the ones doing them. All they're doing is moving their lips. They're writing things down on paper, typing at a keyboard, moving their lips. What are they actually physically doing? Has anybody been hardcore assaulted by David Rockefeller or, Jacob the Rothschild recently? They wielded any M4 rifles at anybody's head of late? I don't see that happening. And I'm not making excuse for their level of evil. Please don't see it as such. I'm just answering, if they understand how natural law operates, how are they insulating themselves against the negative effects of it? By continuing to propagate evil. It's because they're not actually taking the actions. Other people take the actions, and then the consequences get brought down upon those individuals for the most part. It's not to say that there aren't going to be any consequences for the kind of false ideas that they've propagated. There are consequences for them. They've chosen those less severe consequences because I've told people this before. Ladies and gentlemen, listen very carefully to what I'm about to say. Okay? If I had to choose, if someone, let's say the creator of the universe somehow manifested itself and said, you must choose and you have no choice in the matter, you must choose between these two eventualities. You will go into the body or into the place of one of the psychopathic world controllers who has actually tried to wield influence in this world and convince other people to do their bidding. Okay? Or you must go into the body or into the place of one of the people who followed their orders and actually committed those wrongdoings without asking the question, is this something that I should be doing because it's morally right and I have a right to do it? In a heartbeat, I'd take the situation where I would go into the body or in the place of the world controller. In a heartbeat, without even thinking about it for a second. Because the brunt of the karmic consequence is always going to be the strongest, the deepest, the darkest for the individual who carries out the action. And no one wants to hear that spoken. No one, you want to talk about one of the most painful things there ever is to hear. It's what I just laid out right there, folks. It's why they call it a police state. They don't call it a banker state, folks. They don't call it a politician state, nor is it called a lawyer state or a judge state, okay? Or a corporation state. It's called a police state, a totalitarian closed society, for a reason. It's called that because those are the people who ultimately make it happen, who ultimately create that actuality playing out in life experience. Without those people taking those actions, that actuality cannot form, cannot manifest in reality. Get it through your heads, ladies and gentlemen. That's how the laws of karmic consequence work. And these controllers know it, and they've done a masterful job of getting other people to do their dirty work for them. And they continue to do it. They continue to just absolutely lick the rear end of these lunatic psychopaths and say, yes, master, can I have another? Can I have another beating? Heap some more abuse on me. Call me your dog. They love it. They can't get enough of it. We'll be right back. We were talking to Alex in New Hampshire before the break. He asked the question about, if the controllers of this world understand natural law and know that it's in effect, why do they try to break it and disobey it? And my answer was, they really don't. They get people to do that dirty work for them. And just as one addendum to what I said before the break, I just want to make this statement on the air in no uncertain terms, very equivocally. The most evil people in this world are not the people who issue the commands. The most evil people in this world are those who follow them. Order followers are the depths of evil. Ladies and gentlemen, get as offended as you like, scream and bang on the walls, cry in your milk. I don't care what you think of that statement. It's the truth. I'm not here to blow smoke up your rear end. I'm not here to make you feel good about the truth. The truth is ugly. I'm not here to win a popularity contest or have you like me. It's not why I do this. Believe me, if I just wanted to be liked, I'd be telling people what they wanted to hear all day long. The most evil people in this world are people who follow other people's orders. I don't care if those orders are high-minded with the best of intentions and even possibly in alignment with morality. It wouldn't even matter if they were if the orders were in alignment with morality. To just blindly follow is still an evil act because you are giving up the gift of the Creator, free will. Free will to choose for yourself right action over wrong action, once you clearly understand the difference. There is no conscience in following any order. Any order, no matter how well-intentioned. Conscience does not exist within that being, because conscience is the knowledge of the definitive difference between objective moral behavior and objective immoral behavior. The objective difference between those two modalities of behavior. And as long as somebody is following orders, they're not exercising their conscience. By definition. By definition. I hope that definitively answers my stance on that. And it's good. This is good. Because to clarify things like that, that's why I like to do these question and answer shows. We really need to do more of them. So people get a clarified understanding of the teachings that I've been putting out on these topics and my take on, on what they have to ask. Okay. I'd like to do it more. I really do have to move to newer material though, because I'm trying to build up to a new thesis, and I'm slowly unfurling that and unpacking it. But this show is kind of like a build up to that, and I like taking questions like that. So I believe, Alex, you had a second question. I'll let you come back and finish your second question.
Yes, thank you very much for the clarification.
Sure.
The second question is, have you ever heard of a guy named Graham Hancock?
Sure.
And I was wondering what you thought about his work on the roots of humanity and ayahuasca.
I like Graham Hancock's work. I think his work with the Lost Civilization, in particular, that 3-part series that he did years ago was brilliant. It was phenomenal. I like his work that he's done with entheogenic compounds in the book, I believe it was Supernatural. I think his work is very good. I don't think that, he gets into some of the areas that someone like myself gets into when it comes to the dark occult. Not many people do, because a lot of them don't have that firsthand knowledge. And, they don't want to get into the speculation. So in that sense, he doesn't cover the darkness aspect of what's going on, I would say, to the extent of some other researchers. But nonetheless, I feel his work is pretty solid. And I think people's worldview would begin to expand and open up if they took a look at his information about lost civilizations. So I highly recommend his work and people who he worked with, like Robert Bouval, for that particular information. And I think he's coming online to really understand how deeply controlled this society is, and absolutely speaking out against it, which I commend him for. So I have no problem with Graham's work, and I think a lot of people should check it out.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much for taking my call tonight.
Sure, you got it, Alex. All right, let's go to another caller. Let's hear from Milton in Minnesota. Milton, you're live on What on Earth is Happening. Welcome.
Oh, thank you so much. I love your program, and I think that there's a hesitancy to recognize when you talk about psychopathy, the real evil geniuses behind this, a lot of people don't want to recognize Colonel Tom Parker, who laid out the original plan. And even it's been commented, on RBN, we have Deanna Spingola, one of the hosts on RBN, during that time period, had been living with Colonel Tom Parker and had dated because she had dated Elvis Presley, and was intimate knowledge of the secret societies.
Sure.
The Freemasons who are behind all of this, you see. Now, the CIA was involved, but not to the extent as much as the Jesuits. The Jesuit priests were all behind this, along with, what's the name of that one association? They call it, the Illuminati. They was in on it too.
There's such a interlocking connection of orders, of interconnected societies that have all been working toward this same agenda. It's a hodgepodge. It's a hierarchy that's built upon order following, built upon doing things that you are asked without question because you will receive favors in return, protecting your brothers in the network, your compatriots within the network. And it's a spider's web of interconnectivity. That's what we have to understand, that it's no one particular group. It is a group of psychopathic entities that have all come together. They've all said, we can't accomplish this dark work on our own. We have to come together and say, we're going to work together toward this end goal, toward this end game. And that's what they do. They're very effective at putting their minds together. They call it in the dark occult a mastermind. Literally, this is their name for this construct. Okay? When we consider the term mastermind, people think one person and they're the big planner and everybody else follows them. That's not what a mastermind is in the dark occult world. A mastermind is a group of individuals that are focused intently on the same work. They come together, they form one large mind, okay? All focused on that end goal, that end game. And they will let nothing deter them from their path. They're unified in how they think, in the methodologies they're going to use to accomplish that goal. They're unified in their dark form of care. It isn't empathic care, but it's focused intent. It's saying, I care about getting this done so much. This is what I want more than anything else. More than anything else in life. And that's a form of care. I call it dark care because it's not really empathic care. It's not emotion-based care. It's just I care so much about getting this done, I'm going to make it my ultimate goal. And I'm going to focus all my energy on it, no matter what it takes. So they have that as well. So they have the intellect, they have care in the form of dark care, and they have the will to act. And they're unified on those fronts. So the universe is going to respect entities like that, even if they're dark and evil. Because if they're unified and their thoughts, emotions, and actions are working on the same page toward the same goal, on a focused effort, then the universe is going to grant them what they want, even if it's something that's bad for other people. And people can't comprehend that. They get angry at me for saying that. How could you say the universe is going to give them what they want? Easy. Because they're unified and we're not. The universe respects unity consciousness, even if that unity consciousness happens to be dark unity consciousness. It's going to respect unity over divisiveness. And that's why they're on the same page. They're working as a tight-knit unit for the same goals. We're all over the place. The side of freedom and good and order is all over the place, scattered to the four winds of the earth, can't get together over the basics, which is natural law. That needs to come first. Everything else is ancillary to that. Everything else is icing on the cake. Until you understand the laws of morality, you understand nothing. We'll pick this up on the other side, folks. Don't go anywhere. I want to thank Milton from Minnesota for his call previously. Yeah, he brought up Colonel Tom Parker, the former handler of Elvis Presley, and kind of reminded me of the interview I did a while back with Bob from Cincinnati on his show Occult Empire on alchemy, and we talked about the killing of the king ritual. I actually recently went back and checked out a YouTube video that somebody made with some imagery from that interview and isolated that particular section where we talked about the killing of the king ritual. A lot of people don't know what this ritual is. It's a blood sacrifice ritual. They bring it out every now and again. Whenever there's an influential person, most of the time an influential male in society, who has some kind of a synchro-mystic resonance with the king, and what the king represents is sovereignty, and what the king represents is natural law. Again, the last slide from my natural law seminar was Lex Rex, meaning the law is king. Natural law is king. It's enthroned. It's God's law on the throne of heaven. That's the macrocosmic force at the top of the macrocosmic tree of life of the second tree of the tarot. If you lay out the tarot cards according to the Kabbalistic tree, the major arcana is split into two halves of 11 cards each, and then you take the first and last card, which represents the soul and the macrocosmic world. So the microcosm and the macrocosm, they would be the dot cards on that tree of life. And if you lay out the numbered cards, 1 to 10 and then 11 to 20 on the two respective trees of life in this system of correspondences, you have the magician, which is the mastered self at the top of the microcosmic tree, and you have natural law, or the justice card, the king, which represents God at the top of the macrocosmic tree, God's law. God's law rules the universe, and man rules himself if he is the magician, if he is the sovereign. Then he's in the image and likeness of the creator. He's not the creator of the universe, but he's in his image and likeness, one who is like the creator, because he's a creator of his own experience in a way that reflects wisdom. It's not claiming to be God. It's not what's being said there. It's saying that we reflect the values and the intelligence and the wisdom of the creator when we rule ourselves in a wise fashion instead of trying to rule someone else or allowing ourselves to be ruled by psychopathic lunatics. So maybe I'll post that video with the podcast. I think it's really, can clarify about not only blood rituals that we may see during the season of sacrifice, but very powerful imagery regarding how these psychopaths work to try to kill a symbol. They're either killing the goddess in some kind of blood ritual, like Columbine High School, Virginia Tech school shooting, the Columbia Space Shuttle disaster, you name it, constantly events named after the goddess, that are ultimately blood sacrifice rituals. And then they have this killing of the king ritual where if somebody really wields a lot of influence and is also coming online to taking a moral position, they like to take them out, especially if they have any resonance with the king, like the king, Elvis Presley, the king of pop, Michael Jackson, who was starting to speak out against the lunatics in power. John F. Kennedy, who had Camelot, that's a resonator for King Arthur, and they took him out. Martin Luther King, etc. And I touch on this symbolism, the name symbolism in the, interview that I did with Bob. But I think I will post that video with this podcast just for people to check it out. And then you could go and check out the full podcast in the news section or at Occult Empire. Also, I think I want to read on the other side of this next break coming up. I did find this excerpt from, I believe it's the book The Active Side of Infinity by Carlos Castaneda, where he explains the mindset of the psychopath. He calls it the predator, and he gives his take. Don Juan, at least, gives his take in this allegory. Where did the predator mindset come from, and how does it control humanity? It's a great excerpt. I'll read it when I have time in the next segment. But let's go back to the phones and take some more calls. David from Ontario, you're live on What on Earth is Happening. Welcome, David.
Hey, how you doing, Mark?
Doing well.
Yeah, I put a couple post a couple of things on the chat wing. Anyways, one of them was the idea that I heard from my father about that human beings had actually gotten to this time consciousness level and sophistication and technology, perhaps even greater, yet failed in evolving. And of course, like we are right now at a point where if societies that have nuclear power were actually to have a serious outbreak of illness or breakdown in society, who the heck is going to turn and operate equipment that keeps all these reactors? We may already be in that set scenario. Mr. Gunderson, who's a physicist, has been saying since Fukushima's happened that we may already be experiencing that. It's a time warp effect, and down the road we'll all be gone, and this whole thing will reset, and it's going to take such a long time that unless you built it out of stone, even then it might not exist again.
And look what you're going to do to all the other species that didn't deserve that fate, you know?
Oh, absolutely. That's the part of like where I've become a vegetarian by way of my wife, coming to understand through Netflix. And I used to joke around how I'm a vegetarian because my wife became a vegetarian because of Netflix and watching all the great informative documentaries that are available there, and on the internet anyways.
Sure.
And then now through what I've learned from you, I'm on 143 now of your podcasts, and I'll go back and go over them because there's so much information, and I've experienced such a profound change in my life, and I've been on this path and never really had and realized, and you've been a great way shower. You've shown me a direction to now I've going on to more. This is never going to stop for me.
Well, I appreciate that, and that's what I'm here to do. I'm just following my calling as it was laid out for me. You know what I mean?
I understand.
You know, that's all. That's what we're all here to do. Really, it's just some of us are starting to remember it and do it. That's all.
That's my next thing. I've got a lot of technology that I've always wanted to put forth and use some of my music talents that I have to achieve that goal. But that's besides the point. The other thing I wanted to ask is like corporations, like I put, is it not strange that corporations and governments behave in a psychopathic behavior? Is this not the quantum effect of people abdicating, or at least claiming to abdicate their sovereignty, their sovereign responsibilities?
Exactly. As above, so below. As within, so without. You know, we take on those non-values within ourselves. What do you think is going to reflect in the outside, seemingly outside world? It's just a mirror. It's just a mirror of what's inside of us. That's why people don't want to hear. You want to change the world, you got to change yourself. You have to do things differently than you've always done them. You can't just keep doing the same thing and expecting a different result. Doesn't work like that. Yeah, you're absolutely right. That structure is just a reflection. You know, it's a reflection of people wanting to abdicate that sovereignty, abdicate that personal responsibility, and just have someone else take that responsibility for them. And it can't be done. You can only claim you're doing that. You're still ultimately responsible for what you create, what we all create. We are responsible for.
The law of principal correspondence, as I've been put to, I'm reading the Kabbalion, understanding these Hermetic teachings.
Right.
I want to, but anyways, correspondence is that, like, you know, the hottest day of the closest day that our northern hemisphere is to our sun is June 21st, correct?
Right.
Yet the hottest days are always after.
Sure.
Okay. And I started, you know, the 2012 phenomena and, you know, all these hocus pocus, whatever. I mean, I'm just kind of getting off topic. What I'm trying to say is that, these people are talking about how the sun, now I understand how actually the sun actually moves through space and around the supermassive black hole, and it's spinning so fast that its gravitational plane and energies are on a plane. That's why all galaxies are flattened and like pie shaped. Like they're flattened, right? And they're spinning around that thing. Yet the most powerful rays are the gamma radiation. It's coming out right down that plane, and we passed that plane in 1998.
And so those energies will be arriving just as the hottest days of the summer are after the solstice. I hear you. Great point. David, thanks for the call. We'll continue with your calls on the other side of this break. Stay with us. You're listening to What on Earth is Happening. We'll be right back. I want to read this excerpt from a Carlos Castaneda book. I believe it's The Active Side of Infinity, if I'm not mistaken, where this quote comes from. Don Juan, the Mexican Yaqui Indian shaman, tells Carlos Castaneda the following in this excerpt. Quote, "We have a predator that came from the depths of the cosmos and took over the rule of our lives. Human beings are its prisoners. The predator is our Lord and Master. It has rendered us docile, helpless. If we want to protest, it suppresses our protest. If we want to act independently, it demands that we don't do so. I have been beating around the bush all this time, insinuating to you that something is holding us prisoner. Indeed, we are held prisoner." This was an energetic fact for the sorcerers of ancient Mexico. They took us over because we are food for them, and they squeeze us mercilessly because we are their sustenance. Just as we rear chickens in chicken coops, the predators rear us in human coops, humaneros. Therefore, their food is always available to them. Carlos Castaneda replies to Don Juan, No, this is absurd, Don Juan. What you're saying is something monstrous. It simply cannot be true. For sorcerers, or for average men, or for anyone. And Don Juan responds calmly, why not? Why? Why not? Because it infuriates you? You know, that's why it can't be true? You haven't heard all the claims yet. I want to appeal to your analytical mind. Think for a moment and tell me how you would explain the contradictions between the intelligence of man the engineer and the stupidity of his systems of belief, or the stupidity of his contradictory behavior. Sorcerers believe that the predators have given us our systems of belief and our ideas of good and evil, our social mores. They are the ones who set up our hopes and expectations and dreams of success or failure. They have given us covetousness, greed, and cowardice. It is the predators who make us complacent, routinary, and egomaniacal. But how can they do this, Don Juan? Carlos asked. Somehow, angered even further by what Don Juan was saying. Do they whisper all that in our ears while we are asleep? No, they don't do it that way. That's idiotic, Don Juan said, smiling. They are infinitely more efficient and organized than that. In order to keep us obedient and meek and weak, the predators engage themselves in a stupendous maneuver. Stupendous, of course, from the point of view of a fighting strategist. A horrendous maneuver from the point of view of those who suffer it. They gave us their mind. Do you hear me? The predators gave us their mind, which becomes our mind. The predator's mind is baroque, contradictory, morose, filled with the fear of being discovered any minute now. I know that even though you have never suffered hunger, you have food anxiety, which is none other than the anxiety of the predator who fears that at any moment now its maneuver is going to be uncovered and food is going to be denied it. Through the mind, which after all is their mind, the predators inject into the lives of human beings whatever is convenient for them. And they ensure in this manner a degree of security to act as a buffer against their fear. The sorcerers of ancient Mexico were quite ill at ease with the idea of when the predator made its appearance on earth. They reasoned that man must have been a complete being at one point with stupendous insights, feats of awareness that are mythological legends nowadays. And then everything seems to disappear, and we now have a sedated man. What I am saying is that we have against us not a simple predator. It is very smart and very organized. It follows a methodical system to render us useless. Man, the magical being that he is destined to be, is no longer magical. He is an average piece of meat. There are no more dreams for man, but the dreams of an animal who is being raised to become a piece of meat, trite, conventional, and imbecilic. That's from Carlos Castaneda's The Active Side of Infinity. And while Don Juan there might be putting out a very dark worldview, I would ask people to listen to what he's actually saying there. That a predator that is not part of us has come from the depths of the cosmos and took over this place, took over the rule of our lives, and they did it by the stupendous maneuver of infecting us with their mindset, with their worldview, with their ideology. Our mind is now working as their mind. We are taking up their ways. We have taken up their ways. They gave us, he says, they gave us our systems of belief. They gave us our systems of belief, all of our religions, all of them. Not just some of them, all of them. They gave us the monetary system. Okay? They gave us the slavery system called government. And yet we propagate it because we have their same mindset. Very, very, very difficult for people to hear. Don Juan didn't want to, Carlos Castaneda didn't want to hear it from this wise man. He didn't want to hear it. And Don Juan asked him, why can't it be? When Carlos Castaneda says this is absurd, it can't be true, he says, why not? Why can't that be true? Because you get mad at it? So you're the arbiter of truth of what happened here in the ancient past, long before you were born? See, this is where people's mindset that won't look at possibilities that may have occurred. I'm not telling you have to accept it as gospel truth. But if your mind is closed to the possibility that something here happened in our ancient past that we are loath to accept and understand because of how uncomfortable it is, we may never understand our true origins if that's our mindset. We may never understand what put us in our current condition, in our current mental condition. First and foremost, what created all these disorders, these genetic disorders and defects in the human genome? Human beings have over 4,000 specific genetic disorders within the human genome. No other animal on this planet has that many genetic defects in its genome. None. Zero. We're the only animal that's not naturally adapted to living on the surface of this planet, except the other animals that we genetically modified, like the domesticated dog and cat. Why would that be the case? And people will say, that's just natural. That's how evolution worked upon us. I don't think that's how evolution works, period. I don't really accept that personally. I think that's a twisted Darwinian worldview that is actually really stretching for an explanation. I don't think it has Occam's razor applied whatsoever, to tell you the truth. Not a bit, not at all. So, we'll go to the phones after this next break, and hopefully we could, take more questions or maybe hear your take on this. We got to wake up from our sleep. If it is our soul that we want to keep. Very eloquent words. And the only way we're going to wake up is by developing an open mind when it comes to looking at the possibilities of where the conditions that we are currently experiencing came from, ladies and gentlemen. You have a closed mind to that? Good luck. Because you're never going to understand the possible origins of our species. And let me tell you what one of the best methods of controlling the human species is. You cut them off from the knowledge of their origins. You have a people who you can cut off, from the knowledge of their true origins are a people that you're going to be able to control and enslave almost indefinitely. But they haven't succeeded at this. They're not going to succeed at it. And the other thing is, I feel that this, I want to go back to this first possibility real quick before going to the phones. This possibility that, it's just all natural. The whole psychopathy, interspecies predation. It's a natural development. This is like, some people think, some morons, I should say, think that this is the epitome of humanity. This is the apex of evolutionary development. And these are the alpha humans that don't have the ability to feel. I actually hear this. I've read this in forums with people discussing psychopathy. People praising this condition, this sickness, this illness of the mind, praising it as if it's something that's great and should be aspired to, like a psychopath in training. It's really a secondary psychopath looking up to his owners, to his masters. It really is the mindset of the perfect slave, if you really want to get down to brass tacks and call it what it is. It goes hand in hand. This whole worldview goes hand in hand with this notion that since it's been like this, it always has to be this way. Must be that way. Can't be any other way. I just feel sorry for anybody that has that worldview. It's amazing how many people are stuck there too. Unbelievable how many people are trapped in that mental condition. And that's what it means to have the predator's mind. And that means you're going to be locked in the cage called the slavery condition on the earth for a long, long, long time. As long as that's the mindset, expect resistance from creation. And don't expect freedom. Do not expect it. You pay lip service to that all you want. Okay, and say, yeah, I want to be free. I want there to be freedom. I want there to be justice. Well, good luck when that's your mindset. Your mindset is actually propagating the exact reverse of that. And, people are a long way off from really understanding how this works. That the mind is ultimately creating the reality we experience. If you want things to be different, the mind must change. That's from day one what I've been saying on this podcast, on this radio show. Until you go in and change the way you think about what you believe to be true, don't expect external conditions to change magically. It must be changed from the level of mind before it is changed at the level of manifestation. So as long as your mindset is exactly what Carlos Castaneda is explaining there, told by the character Don Juan about how the predator's mindset has been taken on by humanity, expect to live in a cage for eternity until that changes. So let's go to the phones. Amber in Vancouver, you're live on What on Earth is Happening. Welcome, Amber.
Amber dropped.
Okay, she dropped. Let's try Derek in Pennsylvania. You're live on What on Earth is Happening. Welcome.
Hey, Mark.
Hi, Derek.
How you doing? The all is mind. And that's where it begins, right? That's what we learned at your natural law seminar this past summer. So, right on with that. Before I get to discussing psychopathy, I just want to say it's fabulous news, and I wish you all the success with that new book. That's going to be awesome.
Sure, it may take a little while, but we'll get there, and it's going to be out there at some point. So. Just wanted to announce it because the first thing of putting it into manifestation is you set that intention and speak it. Speak it out into the universe. So it will be done.
It's something for all us fans and all those people that love truth and love your work and want to spread the word. I look forward to. So,
awesome.
Yeah. Well, after the last passage you read, it sounds like it's an infection or a virus.
Good way to look at it, actually.
Yeah, prior to you reading that, I was debating myself that it sounds like it could be number 3 as an experiment gone bad.
I am open-minded to that possibility, certainly. Yeah, think about it. What are we doing with technology now, unwisely? A whole lot of stuff. What the previous caller talked about our nuclear technology. We're not even considering breakdowns in these places that have this form of energy, and then who's running these reactors? Look at what's going on in Fukushima still to this day. It's worse than it was on day one. I mean, you know, what this is doing to the oceans, what this is doing to the environment, what this is doing to people and animals. I mean, we built these systems. We built these systems. No one else did this to us. We put this into effect without thinking about the possible, you know, repercussions.
It's irresponsibility thinking.
Totally.
You know what I'm saying? We're just, it's unintended consequences that we don't look.
Yeah,
I guess
all because we wanted to murder Tesla's ideas, you know, and take his name out of history so people can't understand that there's abundant energy flowing all around us, and it's just a matter of understanding how to tap that natural flow of energy in nature and not have to create these explosive forms of energy which are totally wasteful anyway. They're not efficient ways of harnessing energy, regardless of what anybody thinks, you know. Nature is a conservation engine when it comes to energy. And that's what Tesla was attempting to explain to people through his work. And we didn't want to listen. No, because we know better, because Tesla was trying to implement that technology for free for the betterment of all people of the earth. So the industrialists, engineers, and financiers of his day couldn't allow that playing field to be leveled. No, because they had to stay in total control. You know, we can't have anything that's going to benefit everybody here. What will that do in the third world nations, especially, where we have to really, you know, lock them down on eugenics programs? You know, God forbid.
Right. The other thought I had on number 4 was maybe it was created as some type of like what if entertainment project, and the reason why I say that is because the thought, you know, as a kid and a young kid who loved movies, I remember watching Clash of the Titans, and the gods would just stand around in a circle with a little game piece or little kind of platform, and just maneuver, you know, make like little maneuvers of whatever the I guess you could say the figure was.
Right.
So I mean that's how I could see that being a possibility as well.
Derek, you may not be all that wildly off with that speculation, you know, than you think, because it may very well be something just like that, you know. And those movies, they're allegories, you know. You can't just look at those as fiction. The makers of those movies were trying to say something about what may have really been taking place here in the ancient past, and beings that considered themselves titans or gods and demigods and did have interactions with humanity in the ancient world and lived here among us. I'm going to be getting into this in future shows for sure.
And just to say that, to support what you just said, you know, people think Greek mythology is just kind of like a story, but I mean, there's numerous accounts of how certain gods interacted with, I guess you could say, the earthlings or the humans, and created, I guess maybe a new species or a whole new race or a whole new breed of some type of organism.
Well, keep entertaining those possibilities, Derek, and you'll go a long way. And then start getting some reading materials on it. I'm going to be suggesting a lot of reading materials on these very possibilities in the coming weeks. So stay tuned to the show. Thanks so much for the call. We'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen. Stay with us. Let's continue with your calls in this hour. Gary in Pittsburgh, you're live on What on Earth is Happening. Welcome. Hello, Gary, are you there?
Hello?
Gary, yes, you're live. Welcome.
Yeah, Mark. Gary from Pittsburgh. I'm the guy with the DVDs that was down here in Nashville.
Oh, yeah. How you doing?
Good, but I wish I could have hung out for a while, but we had a great time, and I brought a couple, I guess, newcomers.
I got a whole stack of your documentaries right here next to me right now. We're going to be showing them as we move forward doing our Truth, Freedom, Prosperity documentary film screenings on a monthly basis. So I want to thank you for all of those.
Great, yeah. I got to start. I think I have your email. I got a new one. I was looking at. When you were talking last week, we were at another event last week, so I didn't get a chance to call. On the way back, we were listening to your show, and you were talking about the season of sacrifice.
Yes, I reviewed that last week on the show.
Right, and when the shooting happened, when was the Fort Hood shooting? Tuesday or something?
I think so.
That's the first thing. Yeah, the first thing I thought about.
Yeah.
And I keep waiting for something huge to happen here. I never realized that 322 was March 22nd.
Yeah.
Something else I learned from you.
Yeah, it's right after the spring equinox, which is the beginning of this, quote, season of sacrifice. It's a highly symbolic time of the year for them because they're all about the dark sun, and the sun, is the ultimate source of energy, and they're a solar cult. It's a dark solar cult. Ultimately, the dark light means knowledge being used to control instead of to enlighten and uplift. So that's why they take their symbolism after the sun, but it is specifically dark solar cult symbolism.
Well, it all makes sense. I've learned so much from you. I've learned so much in the past 10 years. Waking people up has become a art. Like you say, most people aren't ready for the truth. I mean, if it doesn't make them feel good, they don't want to hear it. It's very disturbing. I mean, I've become obsessed with doing this. I tried to quit doing this for a while, and I couldn't sleep. So it is a great work waking people up. And
that's right. Once you're doing the great work, though, you won't stop because you recognize that's all there is to do. That's the only work there is here to do. That's what we came here to do. We're going to wake these people up. It's just a matter of how long is it going to take and how uncomfortable is it going to be along the way. How rigidly in their calcified mind state are they really embedded. But more and more people are starting to chip away at that stone. More and more people are starting to come forward and speak the truth unapologetically to others and start to do that great work. It's happening. The question is it enough? Is it in time? Time will tell. I can't answer that question. I can't tell you I know that definitively. But I know more people are coming on to the great work, and they're starting to do it. They're starting to say, I won't resist anymore. I'm going to do the will of creation. This is what I came here to do. I came here as a spiritual warrior to end slavery on this planet. And I'm going to do that work, no matter what it takes, until it's done. And when we get more people in that mindset, we have more spiritual warriors reactivating on their mission, the mission that they came here to accomplish. I know that you're one of them. And the more people that continue to speak the truth to other people, we're going to have more spiritual warriors coming online. And nothing's going to be able to stand up against that force once it becomes like a tidal wave. Nothing.
100 copies of your natural law seminar, and I've been giving them out.
Sweet.
I don't start with that because it's a little too deep for most people. you got to start them out with something light like the GMOs or whatever. Sure. But it's one thing to wake people up and get them to start looking at the truth. I think it's easier to fool somebody than to convince them they've been fooled. And
absolutely.
Once you start showing them the truth, it still amazes me how people run in fear. It's like once you see the truth, how can you pretend like you didn't see it?
Because that's all they've ever known. They've only known the illusion. Yeah. The illusion is the safe cage. They have their trough there. They have their little box that they live in there. They have their mobile box that they go to their slave job there. That illusion is very comfortable. It's a very set up nest, and people are comfortable nesting because it doesn't involve the unknown. It's known slavery. The known condition is slavery, and that's what people are comfortable with. And this goes hand in hand with this mindset that since it's always been like that, it must always be like this. That's why people say, oh, right. What can I do to change it? Or it can't be changed. Yeah. That's just how it's always been. Nonsense. Utter, total nonsense. This can be changed immediately if people wanted it. If we wanted it bad enough, if we wanted it as much as we want air to breathe, as much as we need food, if we wanted it that bad, we could change this condition practically overnight because all it takes is to change the mind and stop supporting this nonsense. We do that, it's game over. And they know it. The people who are still trying to protect their paradigm know it. And they know it's on a very, very fragile edge, getting ready to crumble. It's going to take the one or two hits and it's going to reach resonant frequency, and it's going to all shatter like the resonant frequency of crystal or a piece of glass. And when it comes down, there's going to be no stopping it. It's going to be so rapid that the changes we're going to witness in our society are going to be unheralded. And it's going to be because of people who are putting the word out, like yourself and many others, that's of why that dynamic is going to eventually happen and reach a critical mass point. I'm not telling you there's not a long, long way to go to get there, because there is. From where the human mind is at now, we need a lot more people telling this information to others. I can't stress that enough. That's what the great work is. It's not you knowing it, it's you helping others to know it. That's the great work that we are charged with.
Amen. Well, thanks a lot for all your work. One more quick story. We used to have a storefront where we gave DVDs away. We were right beside a laundromat. And we had a big screen TV in the picture window with speakers out front, and people could sit down while they were waiting for their laundry. Well, anyway, this guy come in, and he was talking about 9/11, and he was like demeaning me, and calling me a conspiracy theorist and all that. Mm-hmm. I said, listen, just let me have 5 minutes of your time, and I pulled up on the computer, Building 7 fallen.
Because of course he never saw it, because they showed it once on the day of the event and never again on the mainstream media. What was his reaction?
He started backing out of the store like I had pulled a gun on him.
Yeah.
And you know what he said to me? Now, this guy was a foot doctor. He was no dummy. He said to me, I wouldn't believe that even if it was true.
Yep, and that's the state of mental illness called cognitive dissonance. That's mental illness. See, there's a person, right, who ostensibly is a sane human being that has a job that's respected and looked up to, right? Probably has a family, probably has children. And he's completely mentally ill. Literally. Think about what I just said there deeply. That's a mentally ill human being. He's witnessing something that actually occurred, that was caught on film with his own eyes, realizing that can't be explained unless it was a controlled demolition of some kind, okay, regardless of how you think it was done. It was done deliberately on that day, okay? And it wasn't the result of planes hitting that building, obviously, okay? And he is saying to you, I would refuse to accept that our government orchestrated that condition, even if it were 100% proved that it was true. And this is the mindset that I'm talking about. The mindset of I'm the arbiter of truth based on what's comfortable for me. As long as somebody's in that condition, do you want to know what it really equates to? It actually equates to them claiming that they are God. What he is claiming, indirectly, is that he is the creator of the universe. Because what he's claiming to be is the one who makes truth the way that it is. He's claiming to be God. Okay? That's how sick that mindset is. That you're saying, I am the arbiter of truth. Truth is determined by what I say it is. Imagine to be in that position. Imagine that is your level of unconsciousness. That you're going to say, because I'm uncomfortable with what really may have happened, I'm going to declare it did not occur that way. Unbelievable. A level of mental illness. People like that really shouldn't be walking around on the street, but unfortunately they are, and we're the ones who have to help them. Gary, great call. Thanks so much. We'll continue with your calls in the last segment. Don't go anywhere. This is the last segment for this edition of What on Earth is Happening. Where does the time fly? I mean, that is, that whole show went like in the blink of an eye. But really having a good time talking to callers, so let's keep it up and let's continue with your calls. Let's go to Phil in Boston. You're live on What on Earth is Happening. Welcome, Phil.
Hello?
Yes, Phil, you're live. Go right ahead.
I wanted to get into what the last caller was saying about wanting to how to break the news to people about what they see every day.
Sure.
They don't even know what the days of the week mean. That's sometimes how I drop the feed to them, you know?
Oh, that's a good one. That's a nice, gentle introduction, you know? You even know that the days of the week are named after, planetary bodies, Yeah. And it's all astrotheology.
Absolutely, and I just keep going with it. And then I go into how I had like an epiphany when I and I started noticing the symbols everywhere around me.
Sure.
There's this police station I walk by, and I notice there's 10 lines like the paths on the tree of life. And there's a square with a circle in it at the top, and a square circle with it at the bottom. And right where dots would be was the windows. It was like a symbol stretched, like it was polarized out, and it was all over the police station.
Oh, they're constantly embedding tons of dark symbolism, dark occultic symbolism around police and military institutions and places of operation. I mean, all you have to. I'm not sure if you're familiar with my presentation from the Free Your Mind 1 conference back in 2011. It was called "The Occult Mockery of Police and Military Personnel." If you haven't checked that one out, it's definitely one you're going to want to check out regarding this topic. And to any of the other listeners, just go on my videos section or on my YouTube channel and check that one out, because these individuals are continuously being mocked and ridiculed by the occultists who are in control. They're using these symbols not only to mock them, but to place them around their places of business and work, so that they can have a negative energetic impact on their consciousness, their mind. And it also conveys the message to them that they're being actively mocked at a subconscious level, not at a conscious level to explain it to them in a conscious way. But it reinforces that negative energy at the level of the subconscious mind through symbolism, through archetypes and vibratory energies that are conveyed in form and in color and shape, and the sigils that are all around that institution. It's amazing. It's an amazing study, and you can go really deep into that study and understand things like the hypercube and the trapezoid, constant parts of police and military symbolism. Again, the inverted pentagram used constantly, the checkerboard floor of the house. I definitely recommend that video. But they're certainly employing that symbolism, and it's a way to wake people up, to show it to them and bring it up to the conscious level. Definitely.
Yeah, they're like, you can see it in their eyes. They're all a lot of police are total adrenaline junkies, to the point where it seems like they're they're actually brain damaged.
It's a very, very brain damaging chemical, adrenaline. That's there for the flight response. When we're in fight mode, okay, or flight mode, whether we want to fight or run away, blood is pumping, the heart pumps real fast, it generates the adrenal response, the adrenaline response, and blood flows away from the torso and the brain to the extremities where the force is going to be needed for fighting with the upper extremities or for running away with the lower extremities. That's the state called stress. When that happens, your internal organs go into a state of shutdown, and if it happens chronically enough, that's what causes disease in the internal organs, in the torso. And the brain is also lacking richly oxygenated blood, which ultimately, over a long-term period, causes literal physical brain damage, specifically in the neocortical section of the brain and in the limbic brain, the midbrain.
The R complex is getting all the blood and all the fight and flight is completely controlled by the R complex.
That's right.
Taking over their brain and body.
And that's why adrenal junkies are, especially when it comes to adrenaline junkies that are triggered by violence, are some of the most brain damaged people walking on the face of the earth. People who worship war, people who worship violence, people who worship, total control systems, authoritarianism. These are some of the most brain damaged people on the earth, on the whole earth. Literally. I'm not saying this figuratively, folks. Very literally damaged brain. The electrochemical mechanisms in the neurosynapses of the brain are severely shut down. A brain scan would absolutely reveal this in many ways if a PET or SPECT scan were done of the neocortex of the brain. 100%. So
even their blue and red lights are throwing their brain off, going to the opposite ends of the color spectrum that a person can see.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, when you keep people in these forms of brain hemispherical imbalance, what you're doing is promoting more and more unconsciousness. And as they stay in that level of imbalance, it's a piece of cake to manipulate and control them. Their worldview is broken when they're in that state of brain imbalance. Only a balanced worldview is only going to come into view within the human psyche when the brain is on its way to being healed and balanced. The physiology of the brain has everything to do with the way that we think. Definitely. So we have to, and that's the whole point here. Why aren't we taught about the brain? Why don't we learn about the human brain from grade, first grade on forward in kindergarten or whatever? Preschool, we should be starting to be taught about our own brains. And this is knowledge that is completely absent from all school systems everywhere, just about. And yet it's probably the most valuable information about how we work. We're not taught about how we work. No owner's operating manual for the human self, The
self left out of everything.
Yeah. Yep.
Externalized. Pledge allegiance to the flag every day. They don't even make you say, give yourself any affirmation of your
externalize all that power. You got it. And then you're just ripe pickings for the state, as an order follower. Phil, I want to thank you. Great call, very thought-provoking, and keep up the great work yourself. Keep putting it out there for people. They will listen. Keep doing it. Let's go on to Fred in California. Fred, you're live on What on Earth is Happening. Welcome.
Thank you for what you're doing. You're a very brave person. I think anybody that is a talk show host discussing this type of stuff, especially like on RBN and other talk shows, are the frontline troops to try and make this a better world, or like in my case, my children and my grandchildren. My condition, I've been in extreme pain since '87 and bedridden, and I'm in pass-out pain, and I read. When the towers dropped, I started reading history because I wanted to find out what was going on.
Right. Good way to wake yourself up there.
Yeah, I thought
that'll
I was
do it.
Time, but I found out that, I had all this time to read and learn where other people are trying to keep their financial noses above water and just don't have time to do it.
And again, that's the big part of the trap. Get people involved in all sorts of other modalities that take their time, and that's the spiritual currency. Unless you're willing to invest at least a decent portion of that currency, there's not going to be any return on that investment in the form of wisdom. That's the return on that investment, unfortunately. That's how it works. There's no easy answer when it comes to that. Knowledge is the pathway out of this. And in order to acquire that, you have to devote time and attention. Great call, Fred. Thanks so much for bringing up that point. Very important. That's all the time we have for this edition of What on Earth is Happening, ladies and gentlemen. Remember, there's only 2 mistakes you can make on the path to the truth: not starting and not going all the way. We'll see you here next week.